Hello friends, and welcome of course to the Creative Cocoon Kitchen. We are working on doing some food preservation today, and what I'm going to be making is two things, but it's going to be two separate videos. So I'm actually in the process of clearing out my 4 freezers and making more shelf-stable food for our families and for our friends as we go into whatever type of time this is. This particular series on my channel is about food preservation. So today I'm going to be focused on meatballs, and I'm going to make some very generic meatballs, and we're going to be pressure canning those, and they can be used later for either Italian spaghetti and meatballs or Swedish meatballs. So they're pretty generic, and I like that when I can, because I don't know when I go into the pantry to grab whatever it is I'm going to get what I'm going to be making, and so I try not to do too many of the specialty and exacting things. I like to have a nice combination of things. So as you saw, I am all set up. I gotta tell you, it's like 97 outside, very humid. We have heat alerts. And that being said, I had just come back from my last teaching gig in Kansas City and Overland Park. And I gotta tell you, I have such a good time in Kansas City. I've been going to Kansas City now for about 35 years of my life, at least once or twice a year. I used to do some rodeo stuff in Kansas City, and now, of course, it was, teaching. And I teach long arm quilting, and so it was my last show jam. They had a big convention, and so I taught my last time there. Now I'm just going to be sticking to my Patreon to teach that sort of thing. So it was very bittersweet and wonderful, even though I know I'm going to be going back to Kansas City. So one of the reasons that I like to go to Kansas City, thus the hat, they had hats this time. There is an amazing place in downtown Kansas City, kind of, I believe it's kind of the arts district, but it's called Planters Seed and Spice Company. It's this wonderful old hardware store, but they have this whole back section that has all of these amazing bulk spices and teas. And so when I go there, of course, I go a little bit crazy. You can order through the mail. Now, one of the things that I got addicted to years ago was this incredible orange cinnamon spice tea. And I have to tell you, it's like drinking a Red Hot. Do you remember the Red Hots when we were a kid? Kind of that cinnamon hot, wonderful candy. They gave you red lips and a red tongue for 2 days, I believe. So this is absolutely a wonderful comfort food. Now, even though it's so hot out, I love doing this every day. Now, it's wonderful ice too. And again, it's Planters Seed and Spice Company, and they do mail order. If you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. I like to take it, and I run it through my Keurig. We have one of those fill it yourself Keurig baskets, because I don't want to keep throwing plastic in the landfills with the one-use pods. But I run it through, and then I put some cinnamon imperials in, and I add this wonderful honey my friend Peggy sent me from New Zealand, and it's amazing. And I showed it, of course, during the introduction. But it is phenomenal, and it's just almost like drinking a spicy candy, and it's amazing. It's also, like I said, incredible ice, but today I'm not doing iced. Now, I usually will get 2 cups out of my Keurig with that, or even my coffee when I do my coffee. And what I do is I make my first cup, and then I just run another cup through afterwards, and then I take the pot out since it's reusable and it has the mesh, and I just drop it in the cup that's run through, and then it becomes nice and strong for later. So I usually get a 2 cup out of it. Excuse me. Excuse me for my indulgence. And of course, I have my wonderful Scooby cup from another dear friend with Run Scoob Run. And if you've been with me on the channel, you know that I have 2 amazing Great Danes, Tia and Iris, here at the Creative Cocoon. And they go with me to work every day over at the Quilter's Apothecary. So there we go. So again, back to the point of today. So today we're going to be doing our generic meatballs, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull my beef out. It's already been thawed, and we're going to go ahead, I'm going to show you how I spice it, and you can spice however you choose to do, and then we will start the canning process. And right now I've got my Tia is playing with her squeaky toy, so I will take that away so that we don't get interrupted from the squeak. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my chilled ground beef, and it's a nice high grade. I don't always get a high grade, it depends on what's on sale, but typically I try to lean more towards the lean type of ground beef. This is kind of a combination of both that I pulled out of the freezer. And I have my spices, which I'll go over in a minute, but let me start with this. Before we started, I made sure to wash my hands. I also, you know, if you're cooking or canning and you're cooking or canning for more than just your family, I did take off my watch that I have on, and I made sure to clean my hands real well. That comes from the old nursing days when I was a nurse. And I also want to mention again, I know I've mentioned it before, Stearamine. This is amazing. It is much better than bleach and safer and food safe. So it is a wonderful way to sanitize your area. In fact, again, if you want to learn more about this, it is the absolute best thing for your kitchen, and it stays stable to use in a spray bottle. You go check out a video. We did a video on it, and it's wonderful. It's used in restaurants and the like. So just a reminder, if you're new to the channel, and I usually will just have this always setting. I keep my countertops sprayed and wiped. I keep these, they are in tablet form. I put a full tablet in my spray bottle, and I just keep them in a plastic bag on my much needed to be organized shelf over in the corner that sometimes you see. Next time you see me on a video, that shelf will be organized. Okay, so let's get down to business. So here I have multiple pounds of ground beef. I probably have about, I would say maybe about 5 or 6 pounds of ground beef. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my spices. We want to remember, since this is going to be meatballs, and that it's going to be pressure canned to be made shelf stable, which we can do based upon the USDA regulations. I follow all the rules, and anytime I don't follow the rules, I might follow the ball canning and tested recipes. Now, you can also mix and match some of the dried spices, which I do, but typically I try to follow the recipes as much as I can. Also, when I do can the meatballs, or in the other videos, any type of meat, I do try to stick to pint jars unless I'm doing something like a soup, and the USDA has deemed it safe for some of the soups to use quarts. But when I'm doing meat like this, or the ground meat of any kind, or meat chunks, I try to stick to pints. I just feel myself that it's a little bit more safer. Not a little, it's completely safe as long as you follow the guidelines. So let's go ahead and let's add some spices. I actually am going to add just a little bit of chili powder. Not a lot. I don't want the spicy meatballs because I don't know what I'm going to be using it for. This is a lot of beef, so I just want just a little bit of that chili background flavor. I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to add some cumin. This looks like it's a brand new cumin. Okay, so I'm going to add to this amount probably about a tablespoon and a teaspoon. Again, I don't have perfect measurements because you might choose, and I choose often to use different spices for the different batches. I've got some Old Bay seasoning, which I actually have only in the last 5 years been turned on to it. So I'm going to add some of that. Okay, next, back to Planters. Let me grab my spoon. Another thing that they have at Planters is sweet Italian sausage seasoning, which I absolutely love. Oh, it smells wonderful. It's not hot, it's just, it adds that wonderful flavor. Even though there's no sausage in here, it just gives that nice mellow flavor. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons-ish. Seal that back up. Okay, and I'm going to add some pepper. Let me see how much. I would say I'm going to add one. It's a lot of beef. 1 3/4 tablespoon. Now I also have garlic pepper with a little bit of salt. It's got some paprika. I'm going to add a tablespoon of that. I like all the ingredients there. It's got salt, pepper, garlic, let's see, cumin, paprika, red and green bell pepper. So it's just got a nice amount of different flavors. Now, one thing that I'm going to share, at least something that I have found out for myself, when I'm doing something like meatballs, or I'm going to can patties of, like, for Salisbury steak or something like that. I love onion and I use onion, but I have found with meatballs, if I'm going to process them in the canner or the Salisbury steak, I want to make sure to add dry, because I find, because you cannot add eggs or breadcrumbs and can, because it's not safe. If I were to add fresh onions diced up, well, what would happen, I have found, is that the meatballs won't hold together and they fall apart. And so I find if I add the dried onions, they just tend to work a little better. And let me see what I got here. I'm going to add a nice amount, just 'cause. Yum. There we go. Next thing I'm going to add is garlic powder. I'm not a big salt person. I've never been a big salt person. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons-ish. And that will be good. Everything that I put in here will go well, whether I'm using the meatballs for the Italian meatballs with sauce, or I'm doing the Swedish meatballs. So all of the flavors will work well with either one. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to add is some Worcestershire. And you say it how you like it. I say it how I like it, and that's the way I says it. Okay, and I'm putting about 2 or 3 tablespoons in. Now, one of the things that I like to add when I am canning and preserving the meatballs is I like to add a little bit of steak sauce. I just like that flavor. Again, it'll work well whether I'm doing Italian or Swedish or different flavor value type food. And I have obviously checked the ingredient list, and there's nothing unsafe for canning. You want to check and again make sure that there's no flour or anything like that. Again, I have read my USDA book cover to cover. Now, I probably put about 1/3 of a cup in there. Yeah, I'd say about 1/3 of a cup. And of course, that's a book that if you are going to be doing preserving food, I highly suggest it. I'll throw a picture right here. I always like to show it. It's amazing. Make sure not to buy a used copy. The copy I have, I think, was updated 2020. They update it every 10-ish years or so, from what I understand, with any new information that they have. And of course, they've worked through most of the information. So I completely trust it to go through. And I'll tell you what, when you are doing food preservation, number one, it's a book that you will read cover to cover because it's interesting. Now I'm going to just go in here again. My hands are completely clean. And I'm going to mix up this wonderful mix. That's some nice looking beef. I find that when I find it on sale, it's just good to grab it, put it in the freezer, but then, you know, I don't eat a lot of meat myself. I am mostly vegetarian. Every once in a while I will have some meat, of course, but the families we share food with, they typically are meat eaters, and I'm certainly not going to feed them something they're not going to eat. And so I always try to make what's going to be served. There's nothing wonderful about throwing food away because it's unedible by the people you share it with. Again, table's clean. So any little bits I will put back in there. Just blend that up. Take a few minutes. Now, I already have my pans. I have cookie sheets out and I have parchment paper on them. I'm going to bake mine. I'm not going to fry them. And I'm only going to cook them part way. So I'm going to put them in the oven at about 375 for about 15 minutes. I just want the outsides of the meatballs to start to brown a little bit. I don't want them fully cooked because remember, we will be putting them in our pint jars with our hot beef broth, and they will finish cooking. While they're in there, they will be in pints, so they will cook in my pressure canner, and you always have to check your own in case it's different. My pints are going to pressure cook for 75 minutes. And in my altitude, which is below 1,000, it will be at 11 pounds pressure. I usually go about 13 pounds of pressure for that 75 minutes. Now remember, if you live in an area that the altitude is higher than 1,000 feet, you need to refer to your particular canner that you have to see how much pressure you need to do it at. Because every area of the world is a little bit different when you pressure can. Okay, I think we have that pretty well mixed up. I'm happy with it. So I'm going to wash my hands, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to make some balls. So I had just finished mixing up my meat mix. Now obviously there's fat and grease, of course, in the meat mix. So of course cleaning it off your hands can be a little challenging sometime. You know, this Dawn dishwashing spray, I always keep by my sink. That way it cuts any fat that's on your hand to wash my hands. And then of course I re-steramine my hands so I know that I'm good, sanitized, and ready to move on to the next step. So for the next step, I'm gonna go ahead. I don't need the knife. I will need the spoon. I'm going to grab my cookie sheet with my parchment paper. And also, I did not get it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go grab that while I'm talking. I'm going to grab a little bowl and I'm going to put a little bit of water in the bowl. And when I'm forming my meatballs, I'm going to go ahead and just dip my fingers right in the water as I'm forming them, and it'll help kind of keep it from sticking to my fingers. So we are all set and ready to go. I'm going to portion it out, and I'm going to go probably about, I would say, about 1.5 inches diameter for all of the meatballs. Pull them together if you want to roll them. If you want to have your kids join in. It's a wonderful way to get them learning about preserving food and also how to prepare food. It's so easy these days just to go and purchase food from the store. And we all do it. It's a very convenient world we live in now. So, must be taking the kids out there, four-leggeds. Not for long in this heat though. So I am going to continue to form these meatballs and fill up my cookie tray. I want to leave a little bit of space between each of the balls as I put them on the parchment paper. And we will come back once I get this one and the other tray full. Okay, so I have 2 pans of meatballs. I've got my stove at 375, and I'm going to put those in starting at 15 minutes. Fif 15-minute timer. Okay, so now those are in. It's going to be a little bit of a scramble. By the way, when you see this, as I'm cooking, this is actually a protector. This burner knob right here is the one that the dogs, thank you, This burner knob right here is the one that the dogs will accidentally bump against and possibly turn on. So we put this little protector thing here we got at Amazon, and that keeps that safe. They don't touch the rest of these. It's just that this is the path into the other room for their water. Okay, so I've got those on. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pan because I have leftover meat, and I'm not going to do any more of the meatballs, but what I am going to make is ground meat to preserve as well. I don't like to use oil, so I just put a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan, and I'm simply going to lightly brown it. I don't want it to cook through, but I do want it to par cook, so that way it doesn't bunch up in the jars and end up to be a big glob. Because number one, when I'm canning something like this, or really any type of other meats, I want to make sure that when it's in the jars, which is one of the reasons I also use the pints, that the temperature gets to that safe kill any botulism spores of 240, which is why we pressure can, because boiling water will never get to 240. You want to use steam, and that's what pressure canning is all about. And I have a video, I don't know if it has been put out on the page yet, but it talks about that. Okay, so I'm simply going to put this in and break that up into some nice chunks so that we will have some ground meat for just basic meat spaghetti sauce. If I want to mix it, I'm not going to make spaghetti sauce. I like to just have the meat separate. That way, if I want to use this for sloppy joes, I can use it for sloppy joes. It's just a nice go-to meal in a jar if I want a quick, not have to mess around. Now, I'm actually going to kind of be doing three things at once. The first batch is going to be, that's going to go into the pressure cooker, is going to be the meatballs and the meat, ground meat, and I'm going to do that. And then once I get that going, we're going to talk a little bit about just doing the ground meat. Now I already have my beef broth on. I put 4 quarts in my pot here, and I've got that warming up so that that's ready. I've got my jars warming up. I've got my 3 quarts of water and my pressure canners, so I've got a lot of that going on. So the first batch is going to be, I think, 16 pint max, and that's going to be a combination of the meatballs and the meat mix. Now for the next batch, it's simply going to be ground beef and broth without salt. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. So I'm going to stay fairly close as this starts to brown. Get rid of my lid there, excuse me. The reason I brought these two over is, you know, I've always used these guys because they were easy to get, they're cheap, but I'm really trying to break away from the black plastic. I know that they're not safe, plus you're using it in hot skillets, it's totally not safe. From what I understand, I've been doing a little bit of the research, so I'm trying to move more towards the wooden spoons. It's still, you know, I still have a few, I still have that one, so I'm working on it. And again, I don't want this cooked through. I simply want to be browned on the outside. And then, of course, I will drain whatever fat is in this. Give that a few minutes and I'll bring you back as soon as that's at the point that I want it to be. Okay, so now I have drained this, partially cooked. everything's good. I did put it in another container, so that way it's not going to continue to cook in the pan more than necessary. So that's all set. The next thing I'm going to do is this. My timer just went off, 15 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead, check my meatballs. Gently, because there's a lot of fat in there. Gently, come on, Jamie. All right. Let me get a cloth. Wipe that fat off of that door. Nice. Those feel good. They're partially cooked. I'm gonna turn off my oven. I'm gonna pull my other ones out. I'm gonna reshuffle, and then we're gonna head back to the processing table. Okay, so I re-sanitized. It was a bit of a hustle. I've got my meatballs all on one tray. Now remember, they look stacked right now, but they were not stacked when they cooked because I needed to make sure that the whole surface is partially cooked around the edges. Otherwise they will stick together, and we don't want that. We don't want a mound that we can't get the heat into once we get the broth in there. What else do I have? I have all of my tools. Got my broth. Now this broth actually is my beef stock that I make, and next time I make it, I will make sure to film it. And this one actually has beef stock and mushroom. And now this one has some salt in it, so I won't be using this when I do my plain ground beef, but again, we'll get there in a little bit. Right now I'm worried about the spiced meatballs as well as the ground meat. That's going to go in this first batch. I've got my jars hot. I'm actually talking you through it and myself. I have my lids hot. I do still heat my lids. I know that you don't have to. I keep hearing that. But you know, I've done it my whole life. That's how my mom taught me to do it. And you know, some habits are just hard to break and hard to trust. I did try it once without doing it, and some of my jars did not seal. So I'm kind of sticking with the old school on that. I got my tools all ready. You know, as I tell you in every one of the videos, you want to have things ready. You don't want to be hustling in the midst of things. I'm only hustling just because I'm moving filming equipment around in my little galley kitchen. So I also have my white vinegar ready to wipe my rims. I have my paper towels clean and ready for that. I have my pressure canner is on the stove, and it is heating up because I don't want to put jars when they're ready in a cold water. We're not cold packing, we're hot packing. So, time to get started. All right, am I good? See, that's my marbles right there, trying to get themselves together. All right, I'm good. So I'm good to go. I'm gonna pack in. I'm gonna try to go for 6. I don't want to tightly pack them. And again, let me see how we got. There's 5. That's a nice amount. Well, actually, let me try one more. How's that? Yeah, I like that. That's nice. So let's stick with my original 6. Okay, 2, and I don't need the funnel. Put it in that guy. Oh, and I am not mixing anything with my hand, so I did put my watch back on. Again, if anytime I'm touching anything with my hand or in stuff, I always like to take my watch off and then wash my hands up to my elbows, especially because I'm cooking for multiple people. 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't want to destroy them. These are some nice size meatballs, actually, I think. Well, can I get another one in there? Yep. Remember, we want to leave that important 1-inch head space. Three, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I must have grabbed just the perfect size. You know, they all have varying sizes. I try to keep them the same. I suppose I could weigh or something, but I'm pretty used to getting them pretty consistent. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. Yeah. Put 7 in that one. No, because then they'll be uneven. Now, when I use these, of course, the broth that's in here is something that is also going to be part of the spaghetti if I'm making spaghetti and meatballs. Once I put in the meatballs or the Swedish meatballs. 4, 5, 6. Oh, perfect. Oh, perfect. Almost like I planned it, and I really didn't. That was just dumb luck. Ironic. All right. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have our bottom layer all situated for the canner. Let me get rid of this pan. Take a sip of tea. Oh, yum. Yum, yum. Okay, so now don't want to lose any of my soldiers. Okay, there we go. Put that back down there. Now, also, whatever pot you use for your broth or whatever you're coming out of, make sure you have your handles kind of turned so that you have a straight shot with your ladle. I'm going to mix up that broth a little bit. Nice. Go to about an inch head space. We still have to debubble. Now, one of the things that I normally do, which I didn't this time, because obviously I'm a little scrambled today, is I actually fill my jars about 1/4 of the way with the broth before I put my meatballs in. That way it kind of helps to not get as many air bubbles. You could get that broth kind of in there already. And that broth smells amazing, and I'll tell you, the meatballs smell amazing. Tonight is a salad night, though. No soup for me. Okay. You know, preserving your food like this and making it shelf stable is just such a good idea right now. Having food for yourself, having a backup plan in case of an emergency of any sort, whether it be a national emergency, whether it be a weather emergency, environmental. And God knows these days you never know what you're walking into. And being able to help take care of your community that might be vulnerable and not know what to do with when stuff like this comes up. Now, I'm very gently going into just the four sides, north, south, east, and west. I left enough room between the meatballs that I know I'm going to be okay. Let me see. That one I'm going to take a little bit of juice out of. Actually, that little guy could use a little juice. Well, there we go. That left that. Nice there. We don't want to go above an inch. Because these are partially cooked, obviously there's going to be a little bit more fat that's going to come out of the meatballs. So we want to be careful about siphoning. Get my meatballs down below the level. Okay. All right. Now let's take a gander. This is my little happy spoon that I know a lot of you, if you've been watching, know that I love. Now this one looks good. It's about 1.25 inches, but that one last meatball is going just a little bit higher, so that's fine. That one, I might take a little out of there. Take a little out of there. It's very easy with this type of thing to go a little bit above the inch, and I'd rather err 1/8 of an inch to not over full, because siphoning can not just make a mess but also ruin the seals. You know, the reason, of course, I drain the fat that you saw me do and par cook is because if you have too much fat in there, what's going to happen is your seals will not seal. And so we want to make sure we have the environment for a proper seal. And I think we look pretty darn good. Okay. Now, I'm going to grab my vinegar, paper towel. I'm going to wipe the rims. And I do like to go just a little bit inside outside in case I had any splatter. And that white vinegar is going to cut that grease really well. A few times I actually have run out of my white vinegar, so I had apple cider vinegar. I did use it. That being said, I did have a few that did not seal, so I kind of feel like white vinegar is the right way to go here. And also while I'm doing this, I'm also checking my rims again. These were soaking in water on their side, in hot water. You know, so I always want to check for chips. I already did that before I put them in the water, but I always want to check them after that too, just in case that weird little mix of the right hit and a jar that's weakened somehow from before. Okay. Nice, nice, nice. Now, I actually have already put some vinegar as well in my pressure canner. Get that handle away from me so I don't have any nasty little accidents with hot water. Center those guys right on the jar. Remember, we're going to go finger tight, lid on, fingers only, no wrist. So I finger until I feel resistance. So let me do that again. Turn it until I feel resistance and just give it about a ½ inch more. Turn it until I feel resistance. Let me do that again. ½ inch more. Let me do that again. Let me check that lid. I did check my lids. Okay. I always want to check for an old lid that might have a little bit of resistance in there. I understand that you can take some of these old, not the cap lid, but the your rings, and clean them with little steel wool if they get a little rusty. I have not done that myself. I think I'm getting close to time when that's going to be necessary. Okay, again, close, resistance, just a little bit more. Finger tight. I want to make sure not to tip my jar, because if I tip my jar with the lids not being sealed, I could get some residue where I don't want it that could help prevent a good seal. There's that, and now I'm going to go ahead. My water is just starting to steam, so it's at a good temperature. All right, now just gonna put those guys right in there. Now remember, I have my little base down there at the bottom. We never put these directly on the bottom. I know most of you know that. My newbies don't. So I'm going to put 8 in the bottom, and I can put 8 on top. I have another second one of those little guys that you see down there. And I'll put those on top of these 8 to put the next jars on of my ground meat. I don't think I'm gonna get 8 more out of the ground meat that has the spices in it, but we shall see. It's also gonna depend upon the broth, because that broth is really nice. Okay, how did I do? There we go. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Spread those out a little bit. Because I have 16 and I'm going to split them evenly. I don't want to get my jars close together. I do like to stick to 16. I know that some people will take it to 18, which, hey, you do you, but I'm going to do it that way. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my second rack right on top of those, and now I will prepare the next jars. You know, that's a nice amount. It doesn't look like a lot, but I might actually be able to get all 8. And because this is going to be used for a few things. So what am I going to use this for? Well, some of the things I might use it for. Oh, you know what? I want to use my new little spoon. I got a new toy since the last time. Look at that. I likey. So, what would I use this for? Obviously, spaghetti and meat sauce rather than meatballs. Also, I like to use this if I'm going to make scalloped potatoes and maybe want to mix some of that in. As I layer the scalloped potatoes, anything you can layer, of course, you can add this meat. So it can be used for a lot of different things. Even kind of like a shingle sauce to put on toast. Let me see here. How we doing? We're going to grab my funnel. First, I'm going to get the meat in. And again, the outside of this meat is not, it's browned, it's cooked, it's browned-ish. I mean, it's not browned, so to speak. It's browned-ish. So, now you can fill that up to the 1 inch if you so choose. I'm gonna kind of try to divide it between the two, because here's a few ways you can do this. Now, and I want to break some of that up. Any of the big chunks, not a lot, there's a few that I didn't squish as I cooked and browned it. But what I want to do, because that broth is so good and it'll go with anything that I'm actually going to be using these for, I'm just going to split all of this between the 8 jars, even if I might get a jar with only half meat. My beef broth has a lot of protein in it still. There is some salt in this particular broth. Again, next time I make it, and I know I'm coming due here in a month or 2, I will film it, because it's wonderful. It's got mushroom and just some wonderful flavors in there. Again, I stearamine, so if I lose one of my little bits of meat, I can pick it up and put it in and feel comfortable. Okay. Yep. Nope. Not going to use that one. I'll put that back in the water. I'll split the rest of this. Between these guys. And for a family that needs to pull out a pint of this, and add it to some sauce to get some protein in the kids. Make a wonderful healthy meal over rice, noodles. Because again, they could kind of use this more for a little bit of a stroganoff-y kind of thing. Okay, so now, again, some of them are about half, some are 3/4. And I'm good with that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a scoop in each one, because if I had to add, because I don't have enough broth, a little bit of water, I'll know that each one of these has some of that wonderful strong broth, because that broth is nice and strong. And I thought I might have to do that anyways, because I didn't want to overdo it, because on the next batch that we're going to do, as this is processing, it's simply ground beef, and I'm going to talk about why I don't put anything in it. No salt, no nothing. And if you have pets, it's something that I think will benefit you. Okay, let's see. Get rid of that guy. Awesome. I'm going to grab a little bit of water in a cup. Okay, I actually had a pot boiling. So it's nice and hot. Let me go ahead. We still want to debubble. And with the ground meat, I do north, south, east, west, i.e. on the outside of my jars, and then I go in the middle as well in case there are any air pockets in the middle. I wouldn't do that with the meatballs because there's enough space. Now, I am using the tool that a lot of new people get. They get the set, and this is the inch level, has the measurer to see if you have your inch level. I never use a metal knife. I've seen a few people that I trust use the metal knife and they're fine, but I would stick to plastic just because we don't want to do anything and scratch that glass on the inside and weaken that glass. And it can happen when you use a metal knife in case the metal knife has a burr on it. Okay, good to go. We've got this one is kind of perfect. Oops. Set there somewhere safe. You can see that's right up to where it needs to be. Inch away. Yep, it's kind of like perfect. This one can use a little bit more. That's good. This one can use a little more. A little more. Whole lot of love in a jar. Okay, let's see. Just a little bit. You can get kind of OCD about the whole thing. Okay. Each one is telling me it could use just a smidge more. You know, close is good, but the more the merrier. Okay. So now I have, yep, that's my vinegar. Paper towel. Wipe my rims. A little bit inside, a little bit outside. I can already see just a little bit of fat floating to the top because the meat's partially cooked. That's going to give a nice layer. Add some flavor. And in a crisis, a little bit of extra fat for a family with food vulnerability is not a bad thing. We live here in the north, so we get some pretty strong winters. Alright, got those wiped. I just want to double check the level. Everything looks really good. Now I'm going to go ahead grab some more lids. Before I do, I'm going to use my vinegar cloth and wipe my hands. Okay. How am I doing on the small lids? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like I got some new ones. 6, 7. I have a dear friend, Yvonne, and she hunts thrift shops, keeps an eye out for good jars and rings for when mine start to wear. Obviously, I clean them well, sanitize. Sometimes I'll come across some amazing vintage jars. One of our local grocers has pints on sale for $9. I actually need to go back and get some more. Okay, so I still have one lid left. I'm going to put that over here. Once this batch is done, we'll be doing that all-important plain ground beef. Okay, finger tight again. I'll fill my jars and then we'll head over to the pressure canner. Okay, so the water is just starting to simmer. I have my dial gauge because I'm using the Presto dial gauge canner. I've checked to make sure, I hold this up to the light to make sure that my steam venting valve is clear of any obstruction. I also want to turn this the proper way. I always want to make sure the dial is facing out so that I can monitor. I'm going to put that on. My jars are in a good position. Everything is raring to go. Come on. Line up point to point with the arrow. I've got that on. I have checked my seal. Everything's good and fresh. I'm always constantly checking things. And now I've got that closed. I'm going to turn that up from medium low to medium high. I don't want it completely high yet. I want it start to come up to temperature slow. I'm going to set a timer for about 7 minutes, and then I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit higher to build that pressure until I have a nice level of steam coming consistently up and out through. I need to get rid of all of that air inside the pressure canner. That's the whole point. And then I'm going to let this vent. Once I get a solid steam, it's not an occasional stream through the vent here. It's a nice, solid, strong steam. I'm then going to set a timer for 10 minutes. It's going to steam for 10 minutes strong. That's going to get rid of all my air. And at the 10-minute timer, I'm going to put my weight on here, and it's going to build up its pressure the way that it needs to go. Now again, we do go over this in a video step by step. I think actually when I show the video for the opening of my extra Presto, we kind of go through that, as well as with just about every video. So I can see steam is starting to come up. I'm going to wait until I get a nice strong vent, and then I will time it for 10 minutes and put my weight on. I will bring you back then. Okay, so I want to show you something. Let's see. Might not be able to see, but I have some steam coming out of my vent. One of the things that's not happening though is this little popper-upper is not popper-upping. So it's not time yet. So don't mistake some steam coming up for, oh, it's time to do your 10-minute timer. What I usually judge by this is the steam is going to be coming up nice and strong, and I mean strong. And then this guy is going to pop up because of the pressure. The pressure is going to start building up in there. Remember, that pressure is so important. It is not the boiling water, it is not the heat that protects our food and kills any of potential botulism spores. It is the steam. So we want this baby full of steam, right? We don't want it full of air. That's why we don't fill it with water and cover any jars. It's the steam that gets this up to 240 degrees. 240 degrees and above kills botulism spores. We can be very safe as long as you have it at that particular temperature for, in this case, the pints for 75 minutes. If it was quarts of something, like let's say chicken soup, turkey soup, something like that, then you would do with quarts 90 minutes, and that keeps it at that temperature of 240 or above to kill any botulism spores all the way through the jar. As long as that jar isn't packed solid with meat that's going to turn into a brick, then we might run into some issues. That's why we always check and we do the pre-browning. Okay, I know we're getting close because I have a lot of steam working its way up around this little popper that's going to pop up. And then of course there's more steam coming out of the vent itself. So we are not far from having it vent out all of that air. You can see a little bit of water starting to appear around there. And ta-da! It just popped up. So this guy came up. We've got a nice, strong Level of steam, 11-minute timer. I just set an 11-minute timer. And in 11 minutes, I will put the weight right there. I'll bring you back then. Okay, so now it's been 11 minutes because I always let it go a minute longer because I'm OCD. I don't want to go any longer than that because I still want that water to remain in there. I don't want to lose my steam. I want to lose some moisture that's going to create it. I'm going to take my weight for this particular canner. I'm going to put it on here.